a vivid dream and very solemnly told me that a number of cities were going to be destroyed by atomic explosions. That's where he put it. And that this was imminent. Now, at that time, I assumed he meant nuclear war. But now I'm starting to see it doesn't need to be that way. You can have nuclear reactors blow up, and those constitute atomic explosions. And those are also capable of destroying not only cities, but laying waste entire countries and whole continents and regions of the world with deadly radioactive fallout that will linger for hundreds of thousands of years.
Another follow-up question. Could another possibility for the underground bases be due to atmospheric poisoning through volcanic eruptions? A recent documentary on Yellowstone and megavolcanoes in general, Yellowstone apparently killed plant life in Nebraska over 700 miles away due to Marie's disease or lung collapse due to dust inhalation. Cliff's Webbots sees media reporting people covering their faces in the future almost like a fad. With volcanoes increasing in activity across the globe, it seems clear that a combination of factors will cause the surface of the planet to be barely inhabitable for a period of time, and that underground bases may be necessary to survive. How concerned are you about the air being polluted? Are you planning on looking for a cave or underground shelter in Ecuador as part of your survival strategy?
Well, of course, I am as concerned about the breathability of the air and atmosphere as anyone else, because I breathe air myself, and I do it every day on a constant basis, day in, day out. So I am concerned about that. It does seem that more and more volcanoes are popping off. I know that there are people who have had visions of massive simultaneous volcanic activity when they just saw scores and scores and scores of volcanoes popping off simultaneously all around the world. So yes, in that situation, breathing the air would be a big issue. Also, photosynthesis would be a big issue if the atmosphere becomes too overcast and cloudy and dark, and plants don't get enough sunlight to carry out photosynthesis, then agricultural plants would not produce crops. And if agriculture fails, of course, then there's not nearly as much food to eat. And if there's less food, then that causes a potential famine or starvation issue. So there are many different facets to a heightened level of volcanic activity, breathable air only being one of them. I don't really have a spider hole in Ecuador, so to speak, or a bunker or a cave or cavern where I can go and hang out for X number of days or weeks or months. While the atmosphere clears up, I'm going to be like, 90% of everyone else. I'm going to do the best I can, probably with a bandana over my nose and over my face and goggles over my eyes. And I think most of us in these coming times will just do the best we can. If we're fortunate, the best that we can do will be good enough. Sadly, in some cases, it won't be good enough. And you know what? At the end when you reach the end of your rope and you've done everything you can and you're overcome by volcanic ash or whatever, the reality is that a lot of people are probably going to die.
Richard, Robert Felix believes that we are headed for a magnetic pole reversal and a new ice age. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's very possible, and I want to add a little bit more before I go into that on my last response, and that is to say that as with the pole shift, so also with the volcanism, flexibility in our thinking and our behavior. And by behavior, I mean what we do, what we concretely, physically do with our bodies, with our lives, with our cooperation with other people, is going to be invaluable and imperative for our survival. Flexibility in thinking and in action will be invaluable and imperative. Nowhere more so than in the case of a possible physical pole shift or some kind of pole reversal or magnetic field flip-flop of polarity or some kind of physical reversal of rotation, something like that, or some combination of one or more of those. I do believe that things like that are possible. I do know that at the highest levels of the underground base planning and preparation, there are people involved in the planning, construction, design, etc. of those facilities who are aware that these kinds of things can happen to the Earth, and the geological records suggest have happened in the past. Having said that, I myself had a very vivid dream about 3 years ago, and I've learned to pay attention to my dreams because sometimes they reflect accurately, sometimes uncannily accurately, what happens in coming times. Not always, mind you, but sometimes, from time to time, one of my dreams will be precognitive or prescient to a degree. And in this dream, I was on the Earth where it experienced a sort of physical pole shift, or maybe it was more a change of direction of rotation. From my perspective, within the context of the dream, it seemed to take about 18 hours. First of all, notice that the sun had stopped moving across the sky. It stood still at the same point in the sky for hours, for several hours. And then the planet started to rotate in the opposite direction. Now, I was with a couple of good-looking women, a couple of really good-looking blonde women. And I don't know what relationship I had with them, but they were very savvy. I asked them, what's going on? Now, why did the sun stop moving across the sky? I never seen anything like that. And they said, oh, the Earth is just flipping its axis. Well, at that point, I became extremely concerned. But they were absolutely nonplussed by it all, and I was actually staying with them in a type of huge, for want of better words, it was like a huge glass wigwam, or like a huge glass greenhouse almost. And I was living in there with them. And so, not long after they told me that, and I'd become extremely anxious, I noticed that it began to rain, but it was no ordinary rain. The raindrops were the size of Olympic swimming pools. Think of all the water in an Olympic swimming pool, Olympic-sized swimming pool. Each individual raindrop was like that. In other words, sheets of water with individual raindrops the size of containing as much water as a large swimming pool just came falling torrentially from the sky. So instead of getting an inch of rain in an hour, there were maybe it was like 100 feet of rain in 5 minutes. Just mind-boggling. And I was thinking as this was happening, no one can survive this. And in fact, if something like that does happen, I would dare say 99.9% of the population would perish.
Well, thank you for your answers.
Yes, thanks. If the world's going to end, I think I could think of worse companies to spend it with instead of two blondes, but I'll pass it on to Vito now.
Yes, Richard, this is Vito. And tell me, have you learned anything about the massive U.S. underground base at Pine Gap, Australia, since the writing of Hidden in Plain Sight? And if you have, can you please let us know what you've learned?
No, I haven't. All of my information about Pine Gap came my way before the writing of the book. But for those who haven't read the book, of course, I would say buy my book and read it, please. You learn far more than I could possibly tell you in an hour or two interview. But beyond that, it is a very large facility, very deep, and so secretive that almost no one knows what goes on in there, including the Australian government. And I believe that there have even been Australian prime ministers who have tried to find out what's happening at Pine Gap with very mixed results, with limited success. Speculate. I mean, let your imagination run. Let your mind run. And you may be, in your wildest science fiction-like musings, you may be close to what's happening deep underground beneath the middle of the Australian outback, because the Americans, by the Americans I mean the NSA, the CIA, the various Pentagon agencies, are saying next to nothing about what they do down in that place.
Yes, and I would recommend to all listening to buy the book. It's an extremely informative book. Well, very good. Well, I'm going to pass the ball now over to Patrick.
Dr. Sauder, you mentioned that the Federal Center in Denver might be more important than the Denver airport. Do you think it was expanded around the time the airport was built? I heard that the facility wasn't that elaborate, at least in the 1980s.
Well, I think that many of the underground bases have been expanded, updated, made more sophisticated, enlarged in recent years. The program of underground construction is ongoing. Now, I think that both the Denver Federal Center and also whatever is beneath the Denver airport are tied into the network of underground facilities and tunnels beneath the Colorado Rockies. My research and what I've been told suggests to me that Colorado underground beneath the Rockies is a focus of activity for the planners in the military-industrial complex in the United States and perhaps internationally even. There's a lot there. For decades, they've been planning for that. From what I have intuited and also been told, there are tunnels beneath the Front Range of the Rockies as well as elsewhere in Colorado, and facilities up and down the Front Range. This would be to the west of Denver, extending north and south. And one of my informants actually worked beneath the large NORAD facility, or the former NORAD facility in Colorado. This is the Cheyenne Mountain facility. It's well known. And actually, what we see on television and in movies is just a small part of what's there. There's a cavernous, deeper facility beneath that, and it is a cutting-edge, science fiction-like industrial facility. There are multiple such facilities in the continental United States, and I presume elsewhere around the world, where thousands of people work in them. They have the most advanced engineering available on the planet. These bases are constantly provisioned, stocked, supplied, ready to go. Essentially, this category or class of facility is designed to restart industrial late 20th century, early 21st century civilization and build it from scratch, from the ground up, if need be. And they have all the necessary scientific, engineering, and industrial know-how, equipment, technology, expertise, and personnel in these facilities to do that. They are large.